Want to get going and then she can join in, Maria,
Sure.
just to get things moving. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order on May 17th, 2021 at 5 p.m. Any call to order, public participation. Any member of the public who wishes to address the Advisory Board of Public Works is asked to submit any comments or concerns at least 2 hours prior to the start of the meeting. Alternatively, members of the public are invited to participate via the Zoom virtual meeting using the instruction listed above. In the event further deliberation or action is warranted, any issues raised may be included as an item on a future Advisory Board of Public Works agenda. Okay, so item number 3 on the list tonight was a water dispute for 1C Melvin Street.
Yes.
Joe, did you want to start that or?
Sorry. I would default to Ann to kick that one off.
Yeah, Chris, it would be great if we could, Mr. Levy's here, so we have him go first.
Great,
I don't see it on the list.
fantastic. Mr. Levy, why don't you introduce yourself before?
Sure. Yeah, Robert Levy, John Kenneth. I own business located at Mware, Melvin Street. We've been there probably about 7 years now. We had one other issue with the water bill, and it turned out to be a faulty meter. There's only 4 people in that building. We have 2 bathrooms. We don't use the water for any other reason except to use the facilities. For some reason, we had a huge water bill once again. Our water bill averages somewhere to $90 or $100 a quarter. So that's the purpose of me on this meeting.
Okay. It looked like you did the sort of typical check for leaks, et cetera. Is that right?
Correct, yes. Yep, check to make sure the toilets weren't running, and that's the only thing we use the water for is the toilet and the 2 sinks. We have no other means to use the water there for anything else. We don't, that's not our type of business. Again, just the facilities.
And forgive me, I'm not really familiar with where the business is located, but does it have any type of irrigation, any
No.
grounds or anything like that?
No, it's located behind Shaw's Market, and there is no irrigation at all. The parking lot is all tar. There's no irrigation all around there.
Okay. And anything from your perspective from looking through the history on this?
I mean, on your end, if you look at our history, our water bill is pretty consistent. Every quarter, within $10, I would say. I could be totally wrong, but that's what it appears to me. And for some reason, it spiked again back around the end of the year. So we're just trying to figure out what the problem is here.
It looks like you had a spike in June of 2017.
Correct. And that's when they replaced the meter. They found the meter to be at fault.
Okay. Interesting. So the meter was running.
Whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
They came down and replaced it. And I talked to the landlord who I know, and he said, Bob, they could have put a meter in. Maybe it went bad again. We don't know. I just know that if it was a couple $100, I wouldn't be here. But, that's quite a bit of money. More than average. So I'm just trying to do what's fair and do the right thing. That's all.
I see we have Elena, our other board member, has just joined us.
Hey, Elena,
Hi, Elena.
we're just going over the water dispute on Melvin Street.
Okay, great. Sorry I'm late.
No problem.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, good.
So we were just reviewing Mr. Levy's bills and looking at the inconsistencies and trying to come up with a solution.
And there's no chance that someone could have perhaps left a tap on or any, it just, if the meter has, and the meter has been checked in the interim, correct?
I don't think it has.
It's the water department looked into it and they were like, it's a fairly new meter. Usually if anything happens, they slow down, they don't speed up. They can't find a reason why it would have spiked and then gone back to around the number that it's been. We looked for an outside spigot to see if someone had washed outside. I couldn't find one.
I mean, we just don't have the means to use that kind of water in the building. And it's not our business by any means to use water.
Just out of curiosity, what type of business is it?
We sell industrial and auto body supplies. So we supply the body shops with the materials to fix the cars,
I see. Okay.
mostly paint.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Just rereading some of these.
Bob, just so you know, I did send them all a copy of your original letter and then some backup with your bills.
Okay. Is it pretty consistent though, Ann, the bills?
It's a little up and down,
Yeah.
but not as high, obviously, as that bill.
Yeah.
It looked like September of 2019 was, higher as well. But not anywhere near the September of 2020.
Right.
So it's that is definitely a large anomaly.
Right. And when that bill came in, I spoke to maybe Joe, if I'm not mistaken, to find out what to do. And he said, just pay your average. So that's what we did. And this is where I'm at right now.
Usage is just through the roof there.
Well, I'm just in trying to look for some kind of a pattern in a year ago, September, where your usage sort of was up again to 1,200. Do you have any sense at that time? Did you have a larger staff, or that's also was sort of a larger jump?
The most we ever have for staff there is 5. We run between 4 and 5 people. That's it. No more than that.
Okay. And you did have did a plumber come in and look? I know you did the water tablets.
We did the water test with the dye in the toilet, to see if that would change, and nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, do you only have one restroom there?
2 restrooms.
2 restrooms?
Mhm.
Any like dump sinks or any type?
No dump sinks. Nope. Nothing like that. No. We have no need to wash anything in there. Everything we have is solvent based, so that's nothing to do with the water at all. It's just very strange how it went up like this again. And everybody, the other 2 businesses that are in that building all have their own meters, so it's not like we're sharing a meter or anything like that.
Okay.
There's 2 other businesses in that building.
How many years have you run this business out of that building?
I want to say we've been there 7 years now.
Okay.
Quite the leap.
And in 2017, you had a hot water heater that broke, is that right?
The meter. was the water meter that we had the problem with.
Oh, the water meter. Okay.
Yes, yep,
So they replaced it, it's right? You have a new meter.
that's correct. Yep.
And what is the most recent bill that you have we seen that?
The most recent bill would be the second quarter of the year, right?
Is
On
it,
my one.
how is that looking compared to this?
Well, if you subtract the big bill there, it's right where it should be, I think. If I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Let me just take a look here. So we just got the most recent bill,
Uh-huh.
and I mean, if you subtract that thing, it's right in line where it should be.
Okay, so is in the usage column, is it
In
reading
the usage,
in the
yeah, I
300
didn't look at that.
again?
Yep, 300, yep.
So
Yeah, exactly the same.
in the notes on the account, it does say something about abatement issued for water tank. Is that just a typo? Should that have been for water meter in 2017?
It could be. I mean, we looked for leaks back then, and they found the water meter was the issue at the time. Do you have the only thing I have is the last quarter one. Do you have any of the records before that to see what the usage was? Is it all about the same?
Yeah, so we have, it tends to be around 300 to 400, 500 every quarter.
Yep.
Except there's the quarter that you mentioned, and then there's these other sort of anomalies. There's one that was 1,200. There's one that was 1,700. There's the one that was 5,100, which was, I think, probably what made you call the first time when you had when you were issued the other abatement. There was another that was 1,000. So it's kind of up and down. I mean, it's very consistent most quarters, and then you do have these other spikes. So I don't know if there's something intermittently leaking, or if it's intermittent and it's not leaking by the time you're looking for the leak, then that could be a potential cause.
We'd probably see a puddle or something, I would imagine, for that kind of water, right?
Well, if it's like a toilet or something that's leaking, or a sink, then no, it would just go into the system. It's not actually so much water when you think about if something's constantly flowing,
Correct.
even at a drip.
I've gone down there myself to check the toilets, and the toilets are definitely not running.
Yeah, so Elena, I noticed you saw the same thing I did. So is the water tank part on the notes here? And should that be water meter?
You're muted, Ann.
Like everyone wishes I was always muted. Yes, it says waited for plumber's receipt. Once it got that, it put the water tank abatement through on the January 5th, 2017. So there was a water tank that must have let go, and they provided a plumber's invoice. So I don't know if the landlord did that.
The landlord did that. Mark did, yep.
That was in 2017.
Correct, December.
And do we have any rule about abatements, that we don't issue multiple abatements to the same address, or is there anything in
It's
place?
usually one-time forgiveness or relief.
Okay.
So many up and downs here.
Yeah, I suspect that something is leaking intermittently, because it is strange to go from typical 300, 400, even up to 1,200 in a quarter, which happened in 2019, or
Right.
1,700, which happened in 2018.
Mhm.
Look at 17, June of 17, 5,100. And then the tank was replaced in December. The water tank.
I think that's when they did the meter also. Am I wrong or right?
Most likely.
I think they did the water tank in this, was
Yeah,
it
this-
August or something?
August, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it says new meter installed in August as well.
Yep.
And the water tank was in December. But there was a big spike. So there was, I don't know, maybe, is there something else leaking there?
Is there what? I'm sorry?
There's something else that could possibly be leaking there.
If there is, I'm not aware of it because there's no other faucets in the building. Places
And you
for
don't-
water to be used.
You don't have any outdoor water?
Nothing. Nothing. No, it's all tar there.
And Bob, you said you're renting this, right?
I lease it. Yes, I lease it.
You lease it. Oh,
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, do you have any sense from your landlord or anyone, have they had any other issues with intermittent spikes?
I'm not aware of any. And we know the people to our left,
Mhm.
they haven't said anything to us.
Okay,
They're actually one of our customers.
okay.
It's a body shop and I'm sure they use water to clean cars and things, but they
Sure.
haven't said anything to us.
Okay,
I think this is one that we should monitor and read for a certain period of time
yeah,
and watch for consumption change.
I agree.
I agree too.
I don't like to owe people money. I pay my bills. So what would you like me to do? Or you want me to wait on this?
Yeah, what?
Isn't
Yeah,
that
right.
what we do?
We could wait on that and we won't be, I don't think you'll be charging interest for that while we wait, right?
Correct. Stay current on the other bills. We'll hold the interest in penalties on this until we've had maybe 2 more quarters.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
So on this water bill, I just received,
Just pay the current.
okay. All right. I'll do that. Okay.
Okay, and we'll monitor this a little closely and
Yeah.
we'll, review the data once we
Okay.
have more info, okay?
All right. Do I need to get an email explaining what we're doing? Are we good? Ian, you said there'd be no issues, so we just go with that?
Well, I'm wondering if it would be possible if I called you this week and see if we can get over there and look
Absolutely.
around, see if we can see if
Yep.
we can see a leak or anything, and then
Yep.
that'll help next time the board meets.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll give you a call.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Guys, I appreciate it. Thank you. Nice to meet everybody.
Thank
Be
you.
safe. Thank you for your time.
Take care.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Okay. Joe, should we take a vote to table this till next time, or can we? Do we need a vote, or can we just?
No, I think let Ann and the property owner or lessee can touch base, and
Okay.
then we'll keep it as an action item on the agendas moving forward. If anything changes, we'll certainly bring them back and rediscuss. If not, we'll probably look to officially discuss this by September at the latest, I would say.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Item number 4, new business. Town meeting recap.
So this agenda item is short and sweet because our articles at town meeting were short and sweet. So outside of our budget and some capital asks, we didn't have anything other than a budget supplemental appropriation for some of the damage that we took last August. And it was rather quick. So all of our road money is in place. We're still playing a little bit of catch up with some of the things that were deferred in the beginning of COVID. That and kind of not knowing the complete financial picture of what the future might look like. It wasn't the year to go in with a whole lot of asks. We tried to be as modest as we could to make sure that the bases were covered as far as the town administrator and the town accountant were concerned. So we have plenty going on and plenty to do. So it was a quick meeting, a brief meeting. And that was about it. That pretty much summarizes it. So.
Okay. Thank you for that. And next on the list was the water rate discussion.
So Matt Abrams is going to join us at 5:30. So we have 2 minutes and he'll be on and he has a presentation for us.
Okay. All right.
So Joe, are you going to start all of your paving projects soon? The ones that you, are you lining them all up?
Yeah, so we have one going on right now, actively. We have another one that is in the central register, being bid on by contractors. So the dam has broken and it's about to be full tilt, full time on the paving. So it should be very, very busy between now and probably Halloween, I would say.
Mhm. Great.
Yeah, bring it on. It's overdue. So it's
That's good news.
Yeah. I'll just touch base really quickly. Ann had mentioned that we invited Matt back. So one of the things that Ann, myself, and some of the people here at Public Works decided this year was that, with the way last year turned out with the pandemic and everything like that, I feel like when we started the rate study project with Matt, we were in a place and we didn't know in the short term what the future was about to do to us. So we thought it was wise to ask Matt and his father to come back and work with us again to kind of reestablish our baseline and see, what over the last year had changed and where do we sit this year versus where we were sitting last year. Just to make sure that, with the anomaly that was the year 2020, we wanted to make sure that if there was any, room for improvement, that we could take the time to get it right. So we've done that. It is what Matt's going to talk to you about is a little bit more abridged than last year. It's not to the complete depth, but there are a lot of things that you will recognize in terminology that you'll recognize. And I could comfortably say that I think things from where we thought we were last year, where we were headed, I noted some improvements, and I think that what came out of it, I guess if there's a silver lining in anything, is the future that we thought was in the 5-year plan that we laid out last year actually looks to be a little bit better, as of today's standpoint. So I won't go too much into it without taking any of the details away, but Matt has his presentation kind of laying, where we came from, where we thought we were headed, what changed, and where we think we're going now. So without further ado, whenever he is ready, I will turn it over to Matt.
All right, thanks, Joe. Good
Hi,
evening.
Matt. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Very well, thanks.
I didn't realize when I joined a minute ago that Joe was already working on the intro, but thanks, Joe, for that.
You're welcome.
Happy to be back with you guys. I think it's the same group as last year.
Yes.
That's my understanding. So good to see everyone again. So we're back again to update you on our water and sewer analysis, this time with rate setting for FY22 in mind. We worked together last year at this time on a plan to set rates for FY21, but also on a look that a little bit beyond FY21. We provided a 5-year look, so we were looking 5 years into the future, FY21 through FY25. We presented a rate plan for those 5 years, knowing that FY21 was the vote that would take place last year, but we wanted everyone to be mindful of what the following 4 years look like as well when making that decision. And we have basically just updated our analysis from last year to a new 5-year look, which includes FY22 through FY26. So as Joe mentioned, a lot of the information and a lot of the data, a lot of the layout, a lot of the information will look familiar because we did this last year and we used the same layout, same model, just updated everything for the new 5-year window. So I have some slides I was planning on going through tonight. I guess with the chair's permission, I'll go ahead and do that.
Oh, floor is all yours.
Okay, thanks. And Joe or Ann, can you just update me on what the board has seen at this point?
I believe just the presentation packet.
Okay, thank you.
So they should have all had the PowerPoint to this point.
Yep. Okay. So as we go through these slides, I want everyone to be aware that there are workbooks that support all of the numbers and information that we will be showing to you. And we can look at those. We can dive into details if we want. And whoever the host is, I don't have permission to share right now. I still don't have permission.
Ian, are you the host?
Is it Sherry?
I think Chris might have permission to do it. Down the bottom on share screen.
Another option is that the host can share the slides if they are available, and I can walk you through that.
I could hold them up like this.
Your arms may get tired, so.
All right, I got it. Sorry, I had to look up a key.
Okay. Looks
Okay,
like
so you should be good to go.
okay. Oops. Can everyone see the presentation now? Yes. All right, great. Okay. Like I said earlier, we're happy to be back with you this year, just for a water and sewer update. So we're going to take a quick look back at FY21 to start, for both water and sewer. This is kind of a review of big picture, what the Water Enterprise Fund looks like, what water billing looks like, and also what has happened over the last year since we last worked with you, for both water and sewer. On the water side, there are approximately 8,500 accounts. Last year at this time, as part of the work that we did, the service charge was increased from $18 per bill to $19.16 per bill for the smallest meters. I think that's meters up to 1 inch in size. There were larger increases for meters larger than 1 inch. You'll recall that we implemented a 4-tier rate structure. Prior to that, there was a flat rate only for all usage. And in addition to the changes related to that tier structure, at this time last year, we were looking at a plan of 7.7% increases on the water side per year, FY22 through FY25. So the picture has changed there, and we'll get more into that. But that's what we were looking at last year based on the assumptions that we had in last year's analysis. And that was before what we know is a really dry, warmer season last year. Consumption billed was approximately 82 million cubic feet. That does not include the municipal consumption of 2 million cubic feet. That was up 6.2% from FY20. So that's a pretty big jump there. And 8.5% from FY21, FY19. So consumption was substantially higher in 21 than 20 and 19, and we can get into some of those reasons, some of the reasons why. Billings were up over 850,000 or 14% compared to the prior year. And we are currently projecting a surplus of over $400,000 for FY21. So here's a quick financial look at the water fund and some of the important financial numbers. We have the breakdown of the budget. It's the expenditure budget on the left-hand side of $6.2 million. You'll see that the MWRA assessment is almost $3 million in FY21. That's just under 50%. And debt, $500,000, 8%. I know we probably talked about this last year, but that's from my experience working with different municipalities on similar studies. We don't usually see debt that low. That's something that's unique to Wakefield. And that's great that that debt is as low as it is, because there's just less money being spent for that reason. There are a lot of communities that want to do projects, and the only way they can fit it in really is to borrow, so they have a less, maybe a less yearly cost, but overall, more money is being spent by making those decisions. That's not the case in Wakefield. For revenues, projected revenues, because FY21 is not final as of now, as you know. User charges, we're projecting $5.7 million there, 87% of the revenue total. Service charges, we mentioned they went up a little bit, so it's $600,000, which is about 9%. And down at the bottom, retained earnings was last certified at just over $1 million. And we like to compare that to the expenditure budget, because that's a good metric to understand how healthy or unhealthy retained earnings are. And that's 16.5% of the budget for FY21. And that's a pretty healthy number right now. And with the 21 surplus, projected retained earnings are about 977,000, which is about 15.9%. And the projection assumes that expenditures will be, that the expenditure budget will be spent fully, and based on the estimates we have for user charges. And I should mention that if anyone has any questions about specific slides or things I'm talking about, it's okay to interrupt me and ask them now. We can also wait till the end. It's really up to you what your preference is, but I don't mind being interrupted. Okay. So now we're starting to look forward, actually. So we're not going to show the 21 slide for sewer until a moment from now, but taking water one step further. So what are some of the things we're looking at for the upcoming fiscal year and years beyond that? We're looking at total expenses just to try and get an understanding of how much they're increasing, because it's good to kind of have your eye on that. And we're looking at an average of 4.6% over per year from FY22 through FY26. The MWRA assessment in FY22, it's actually down slightly from FY21, and that's unusual because we're working with other communities where it's gone up significantly, because the FY22 assessment is based on water consumption in 2020. So that'd be consumption with MWRA, not total consumption, because Wakefield has its own treatment plant as well, supplying water. But that's something that I find very interesting, because we've seen it gone up significantly in some of these other communities, but that's not the case in Wakefield. It averaged an increase of 9.5 the prior 5 years, 9.5% the prior 5 years. So just kind of think of that holistically. It had gone up by 9.5% every year, and then this upcoming fiscal year, it's actually down. So that shows you the impact of the treatment plant. And also going forward, I just want everyone to be aware that we changed the methodology that we're using now to project the MWRA water assessment. We we came up with what we think is a comfortable conservative flow share projection for the town of Wakefield. And we're taking that flow share as a percentage of what we expect the system-wide assessment to be for MWRA. That's how they calculate the assessments. So it's a little bit different than what we did last year, where we were just kind of assuming a certain increase every year. Now we have a little bit better handle, a little bit more targeted approach there. For debt, 1 year increase of over $100,000, and then we're looking at decreases the next few fiscal year. Capital, which is something we talked about pretty significantly last year at this time, because the capital investment, even though it was happening, it wasn't happening at a level that DPW was seeking. So we were trying to figure out a way to kind of ramp up that capital investment. And we've started that process. So included in our analysis is an additional $125,000 investment per year, eventually reaching $500,000 per year. And this is capital, I'll call it outlay. There is a capital outlay line in the water budget. There's also another line that we're calling articles. But both of these things are funded out of retained earnings currently, I believe. But these would be capital investments that would not be borrowed. And down at the bottom, we have capital investments that at this point are planned to be borrowed, because they're a little bit, these are specific projects that are a little bit larger in scale. So we currently are looking at a water tower removal project in FY22 of $3 million and a downtown mains project in FY24 of $2 million. And that water tower removal project originally was in our plan last year, but it was in a future year. So we've been moved up. Just want everyone to be aware of that as well. And Joe or Ann, I'd also welcome, any additional comments that you have as I go through this, in case I've left something out or misstated something.
You got it.
Okay, so the same slides for sewer. Looking back for 21, 8,200 accounts. Another comment on the service charge. It also increased by a small amount for the smallest meters, up to 1 inch, with larger increases for the larger meters. Also 4-tier rate structure. Also, we were looking at a plan last year with additional increases beyond just the tier structure changes. That plan was 4.5% per year, FY22 through FY25. You'll find that the flow that was billed is very similar in size and scale to what was billed for water. 83 million cubic feet, less the 2 million from municipal. It was up 5.8% from FY20 and 8.4% from FY19. Billings up over $800,000 or 8% compared to last year. Projected surplus of over $400,000. So it's pretty clear at this point that FY21, is a good year financially. And we can talk real quick about it, but the main reasons why are last summer was very dry, and that definitely impacted consumption patterns. People watered their lawns more. And on top of that, the pandemic that took place and is still taking place, people were home more, people were using water more. I think specifically about what was going on in my neighborhood. Families all of a sudden were home over the summer with nothing to do in very dry conditions. And any parents of families that have young children were looking for ways to entertain them. A lot of water play took place in the backyards. A lot of pools got purchased. It was just an exceptional year for different reasons. And these numbers tell the story. I mean, this is what we're seeing everywhere. But, it could very well be just a one-off year. It could completely swing in the opposite direction next year. So we need to keep that in mind as well. All right, similar slide for the financial breakdown for sewer. The MWRA assessment has a larger chunk of the sewer budget than it is the water budget, 75%. Debt, again, very small. On the revenue side, user charges 8.4 million, 90%. Service charges a little bit more there than there is for water because the charges are a little bit higher. Retained earnings was last certified at 856,000, which was 10% of the FY21 budget. And with the surplus that we're projecting, we're looking at over $1 million at the next certification, which would be just over 11%. Okay, so starting to look forward for sewer as well. So we're looking at an average total expenditure increase of 4.5% per year, FY22 through FY26. The MWRA assessment was down 1% in FY22 from the 21 appropriation. There was a deferral of capital on the MWRA side, which caused a decrease. And the increase average over the last 5 years, 3.2%. And we have decided to project a little bit higher than that at 4% per year increase for MWRA assessment for sewer, because we're expecting MWRA to recommit to that capital plan that they deferred recently. So we were a little bit more conservative there, but we feel like it's the right approach. Even though the average increase was 3.2%, we think 4% is a nice conservative estimate moving forward. Debt, minor impacts there, small decrease in 22, and again, decrease in 23. And on the capital side, very similar to the water setup that we just talked about, $125,000 per year increase, ramping up to $500,000. Again, these are capital investments that would not be borrowed. And the town has taken advantage of MWRA financing available, and that includes, well, that doesn't include, but we're anticipating an additional one in FY22. And I believe that might be all the funding that would be available, at least for the short term, from MWRA. Okay, so we're going to start looking at more detailed numbers here, and then get into some rate plans. Should we stop for some questions or comments at this time? It's okay if there are none. We can.
Does anyone have anything to say?
I don't have any right now.
I don't have any right now either. Thank you.
All right,
Same.
I'll keep going then. All right, so we always like to present what we call the baseline or the do nothing scenario. This kind of tells the story that, I mean, it's not really realistic, because any responsible board would not let this situation happen, but we like to show what things would look like if there were no revenue changes. So basically, revenues stay neutral. That means no rate changes, and expenditures are what we're projecting, and those increase over year to year here in this case. So you can see that retained earnings, the blue line is projected retained earnings, the orange line is the targeted retained earnings, which I think is 8.5% in this model. So you can see that retained earnings starts above the target and transitions to less than the target in FY22, but still above zero in FY22, and then goes below zero in FY23 and beyond. So in short, one way to say it would be that if you did nothing, retained earnings is, the balance is high enough to cover deficits in FY22, but not beyond that. And sewer, it's actually a very similar graph and situation as I just described. Again, retained earnings are high enough to cover the projected deficit in FY22, but not beyond that. Okay, service charge. So what do we do with the service charge? So last year at this time, we already talked about a little bit, there was an increase in it. It was based on a methodology that we put together based on the AWWA standard equivalent meters methodology. And what it was a calculated service charge for different meter sizes to recover enough revenue to cover what we calculated as administrative costs. So Ann and Joe got together one day. They calculated what the what the administrative costs were that would need to be recovered from the service charge, and we set a path to get to full recovery of those administrative costs, but not in year one. we wanted to mitigate the impact on users in the short term and not have the full effect of that calculation and that plan hit them in FY21 or even in FY22. So we started a plan of targeting at 65% cost recovery of the administrative costs in FY21 and set the service charges accordingly. Now this year, and when we came up with that plan, we were planning on adding on an additional 5% per year of that recovery. So FY22 would be 70%, FY23 would be 75%, so on and so forth. And at this time, we are still planning on doing that. So the service charges that will be presented momentarily are with that in mind, trying to get from 65% cost recovery of administrative costs to 70% cost recovery. And here at the top are the current charges, which I mentioned earlier, $19.16 per bill for water for the smallest meters, $21.40 per bill for sewer for the smallest meters. And here is a table showing the different charges per meter size, the current ones FY21 and the planned ones for FY22 to try and get the 70% cost recovery. This is water only. There's a similar slide for sewer that I will show you momentarily. And here's the sewer slide. Okay, rate setting objectives. We are focused on an emphasis on sustainable and more predictable, a sustainable and more predictable financial future, be more proactive and less reactive. And it's the second year that we've been doing this, as you know. In all the work that we've done, we're assuming that everyone takes advantage of the on-time payment discount of 10%. So that was worked into all the numbers that we ran. We have increased the retained earnings target balance. We were looking at 7.5% last year, and with the strong FY21, as we talked about, we thought it was safe to increase that to 8.5%. So all the targeted retained earnings that we are talking about this evening are focused on that 8.5% target. The longer term goal is 10%, which is consistent with town policy for reserves. Another goal is that we want the rates to cover annual capital improvement needs with limited debt, something that we've already talked about. The town does a very good job of that. The ultimate goal is to have rates fully covered expenditures. I guess that's the goal anywhere, but that is a very good goal to have, so that you have a nice retained earnings balance. It can be used for investing in capital. It can be available in case it's a really wet year and you need to help with an operating shortfall. And retained earnings is really meant for those types of things. Ideally, it's not often that we see communities have that ability, but it would be really nice if it was that way and the rates were just keeping up with expenditures. All right, so now we're on to options. And this slide is set up similar to last year's. It may look familiar to you, but we wanted to give you as much information as we could for decision making. So option one, and we'll present a few different things. I think we have 3 options in here. Option one, a lower increase in 22 with higher increases the subsequent years. So as we go through this, let's keep in mind what it looked like last year, okay? When I presented this slide last year, we had a tier change in year 1 and we had 7.7. We had 7.7% in the subsequent 4 years. So we're looking at a rate plan, obviously, that's a little bit lower impact than that. And the main reason why is because of where we think FY21 is going to end up. So on the right-hand side, you can see what the water rates would be for FY22 rates if the 2% were voted. You can see the middle part. This is we had this table on the baseline slide earlier, but there are your important financial and retained earnings numbers based on this rate plan. The graph shows the same graph that we saw on the baseline. We're trying to get to that orange line. We don't want to be below it. We want to be right around it or maybe even above it. And you can see that retained earnings, which starts off, as you know, above that orange line, just like it did, starts to go down, but it kind of levels off with this rate plan. And you can also see in the bottom table what the user impact is. And through all the work that I do like this, it's critical in my mind to include what the dollar impact is for certain users, because sometimes when people see rate plans with certain percentages in there, they get hyper focused on that. The number may not just be what they're thinking, and they just can't get past that. When you show dollars, it may present a much more palatable scenario. And like I said, I just think it's really important to include that. So you have that information available to you as well. We've chosen the same user groupings that we used last year, just for consistency.
Matt, if I could jump in for 1 second, just for clarity purposes, if you were to look at the for all of these options for both water and sewer, with the exception of the summary slide, the financial denominations in the blue shaded cells, those represent the pre-discount amount. So that, first tier number through fourth tier number is not reflective of the 10% reduction. So just to keep that in mind.
Thanks, Joe. So for sewer, we kind of set up the same type of models and put them together. So you're going to see a lower increase for year one and a little bit of a higher increase for the subsequent years. And we like to use level rate plans whenever we can because they're consistent. People can get used to them, and it avoids the spikes that sometimes cause rumblings, whereas a level plan may not. So same exact setup here. You can see with the graph that we're trending towards that line, and we level off there and we start going back up a little bit. What that means, as you can see by the numbers in the middle table, is that by FY26, you have your rates fully covering your expenditures at that point, shown by that last green number of $147,000. That's a surplus in that year. And a summary slide where we're kind of pulling all of that together and presenting data a little bit differently. But so this combines the rate plans that were just shown, but we're focused really on FY22 here only with these numbers. And you see in the blue table, you actually see the rate increase that we showed a second ago for FY22, what the calculated rate would be, and then there's the discount that Joe just mentioned a moment ago. So it's available on this slide. Also in the table down below, we're showing what the calculated bill would be, but also what the calculated payment would be if they pay on time. And there's a % difference comparison there to the far right. That was actually something that we added towards the tail end of our work together last year, just for comparative purposes. Option 2, completely level rate increase plan. And again, keep in mind, 7.7% last year. Same exact setup of this slide. You can see that it takes a little bit longer to reach that orange line under this scenario, and that makes sense because the increase is higher in year one. Average residential users, so that's an increase of less than $8 per bill. And the sewer one, very similar setup with that graph. Average residential user, $11 per bill. And that's the bill, that's not the payment amount. And here is the summary slide set up the same way. Again, this is just FY '22. Obviously, the rate plan includes more to make them to get through the next 5 years as opposed to just 22. And for water, we kind of went in the middle of the increases for 22 with this one. 3.5% year one, a little bit higher in the subsequent years than the last rate plan that was shown. That's about a $7 impact per bill on the average residential user. And for sewer, similar setup, kind of a middle of the road of those last two for year one and a little bit higher in the subsequent years. And we're looking at $8 per bill for the average residential user. And the summary slide. And in conclusion, that was all I had for you tonight, but I'm very happy to take questions and comments and discuss whatever you'd like to.
Joe and Ann, do you have a recommended option that you prefer?
I think so. I don't want to influence maybe what the board's thoughts and evaluation might be. You know, I think last year, I certainly know at least Matt and myself probably ran a scenario with every single rate option that you could actually quantify. And we had a ton of them to go through. This time around, we thought about, obviously the level increases, which are the most stable and predictable, but also understanding, kind of how the world is right now. What would it look like if we tried to maybe reduce year one and finance it through the rest of the years through the rate program, which would have been option one. And then there's option three, where we reduced, a little bit in year one with a little bit more absorbable projected increase for the following years. So a general summary, maybe, the onset was good, better, best, but really, it's all subject to interpretation and level of comfort really for the board. I think that, we could work with any option that we put in. The only thing that it's going to change is this time next year, what that direction might look like. Essentially we'll get to a crossroad. We'll either have to take a left or a right. So what we do here, may dictate that, but I don't think anything presented before you is something that can't be managed. So I know you're hoping for a clear cut, but I'll weigh in after the board's able to discuss a little bit. To be clear.
I have a question. So all of these are ran with service charge increases.
Yeah.
I mean, do the service charges have to go up? Like, could we talk about that a little more on what that goes towards or how that works?
Yeah,
For the service charges specifically?
we can talk about whatever the board wants to talk about.
I was just curious of what the difference was if we didn't increase the service charges. Basically, I mean, anyone knows my opinion. It's been a tough year for everybody, I'm sure, and kind of unpredictable a little bit still. I still think people are feeling the effects of COVID. And I'd like to be as conservative as we can and mindful of the residents when we make our decision on this. So I'd certainly like to just discuss this a little more and see what everyone's opinion is.
Matt, that might be your specialty to show them what the impact is.
Yep. So I just ran the numbers. So based on the change that we laid out on the water side, we were expecting an additional about $45,000 with the service charge. And on the sewer side, it's a little bit more, about 49,000. So if that were not to be implemented, it wouldn't really be a game changer in terms of the numbers that we present. You know, it would have a small impact, but not a major one.
So we're talking, looking back at the slide, I have it up here for the base fee change. On the water side, we're only talking about a matter of pennies, right? Less than $1 per bill.
I think it might be a little bit more than that.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
just over
$1,
$1 per bill
40.
for the smallest ones. I mean, if you get in, some of the larger meters would obviously pay more, but yes, you're
But
just
for
over.
most residential, so just over $1 per bill, per bill.
Right.
Plus the sewer change, which would be about $1.50 per bill.
Yep.
I'm curious, so just to clarify on the retained earnings, so that's operating basically as a reserve fund, is that correct? Like we don't have any other reserves besides the retained earnings that are shown?
No, if retained earnings went to zero, it would either be borrowing or asking the town. I don't even know if it's possible, but you'd have to ask the town for the tax levy to basically bail out whatever debt we would have. So
Okay,
Yep.
you know, that's your stabilization fund, emergency fund, and you know, available sum of money should you have to get into a capital project the following year.
And
Well, yeah, but also Joe, if you know, if you're looking at a large structural deficit just beyond capital as well,
Right.
you would fall in that situation. Then, you know, another way to do it would be just not to spend money, you know, cut staff or something like that. So there are options, none of them good, but yeah.
but
when you showed the do nothing approach, did that include the increase to the base fees as well? And it was just do nothing to the volumetric rate?
Good question. I'm pretty sure it did not include the rating, you said the service charge, right?
Yeah.
I can check that for you. Hang on.
in our whole goal implementing the service charges, if memory is serving me, or one of the main drivers, was it not because we did not have any reserve, or we had such a pitiful amount of reserve?
I think
Is that
one of the
right,
things
Joe?
that was a charge that historically had existed for some time, and it was voted to go away. I think the mindset, at least in the beginning of my predecessor, was, you know, that captured some things, like for instance, you know, someone, you know, doesn't live in Wakefield for the winter time, right? We're still sending staff out there to read that meter for the 2 quarters that they might be gone. So we incur costs to do that, although there's no flow that contributes to offset that. So that was a little bit of the mindset. Whether or not your bill had any consumption on it or not, it still gets printed, it still gets mailed, it still gets delivered. So there's no flow to, you know, offset that in some circumstances. So that is taking that into account and making sure that at least, you know, the basis for postage, for example, we have enough revenue coming in to cover that expenditure.
Yep, and to answer the question, the do nothing scenario does not include an increase to the service charge.
Okay, thank you.
What is
Can you-
the slide number, Matt, for the do nothing scenario? Is there
was
Baseline, slides 8 and 9.
9? Okay, thank you. Sorry, Elena.
No, that's okay. Trying to remember my question now. Oh, can you just tell me one more time, what was the rate increase that we had last year on the volumetric rate for water and for sewer?
The one that was actually implemented.
Yeah.
So it was a tier structure change. So
Oh, right. Okay.
yeah, so I mean, there is certain percentages that we could talk about, but we were more focused on the tier structure.
I guess on the average bill is really, I guess, my question. If we
Yeah,
remember
okay.
that number.
Let me find last year's presentation. I can get that for you.
So it was like depending on the size of your meter, right? Where was it?
Yeah, the size of the line and then consumption. Or feet, right?
Well, for water, it says inches, like 5/8. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I'm at the
Yeah,
surface.
that's for the meter size, and then it was which tier your water use was in.
Right.
Because I do remember that we didn't increase the volumetric rate for tier 1. So the first 1,000 cubic feet,
Oh,
we
that's
paid the same as last year, but
Yeah.
then we increased above that.
So we had last year calculated for water, the average residential user, we had the bill going up $5.40. That's per bill. That's a percent increase of, hang on. .3%.
On water,
Yep. Would you like the same for sewer?
that
Sure.
would be great. Yeah.
Okay, for the average residential user, we had the bill going up $6.44. That's per bill. For a percentage difference of 2.6%.
Okay. And that included the service fee increase.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Almost positive.
And one other question, what's your sense with the MWRA in terms of how our percent share changed from fiscal 20 to 21? Or actually from fiscal 21 to the predicted change for 22. How do we expect that to look in 23? I mean, for a
So
lot of communities, I know that's going to be a big change back or in a different direction.
yeah, so I'll speak about the numbers in front of me, and then maybe Joe can add some context about why they're different and where he thinks this is going. So here's historically what the flow share is. And so for FY18, it was 0.9%. Then it went to 0.85%, then 1%, then 1.07%, then 1.02%. So that's a range anywhere from 0.85 to 1.02%. And that 1.02% is the FY22 number. But it's down from the prior year, which was 1.07%. And like I said earlier, most communities saw that go up pretty sizably too, for the reasons that we've already talked about, and also the Boston impact, which went down in 2020 because of the pandemic. But again, Wakefield's went down. So if we think about all those percentages and where we think it's going, and again, I'll ask Joe to speak on this. We thought going with 0.97% as the flow share was a good conservative estimate. So that's a little bit lower than what was the case for FY22, the 1.02%. But if we look back at 18 and 19, it's still higher than those first two numbers I gave you, which is 0.9% and 0.85%.
And I assume, I mean, the reason ours is different than others is because of Crystal Lake and how we choose to manage it. So I guess that's really the question for Joe is
Yep.
what do we expect to do differently or the same in 23 that could impact that?
So one of the things that we did differently just in this last past year is probably the most significant impact to that. The treatment plant operator, that person does not, work your typical 7 to 3 DPW labor shift. That person is in between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning to hit the peak demand in most mornings. The more demand that's out there, the more that we can pump and push into the system. During the middle of the day when people aren't using as much water, we can't pump as much. So we're really trying to target those peak consumption times and make sure that there's a person in the seat with our plant operational. As we watch, if things, change or, tendencies seem to adjust or dictate that we need to modify that again, we're just going to follow that pattern. So whenever we see consumption spikes in the system, we're going to make sure that we tailor the operation to suit those hours. I think we have now some redundancy. We have more than one individual that can run the plant. So hopefully, a stability standpoint, we should be able to run longer. The other thing that we're doing is we're putting some work into the building to make sure that our filter runs are longer and that we have the ability to stay on and flowing as much as we can. We're still kind of in the infancy of this approach. I would think that, we're just starting to hit our stride with this. We've reaped a little bit of the benefits to it, but I don't think we've been able to capture a complete year. Albeit, everything looked a little bit different. Although this year, as far as operating the treatment plant, it is a solitary position for the most time. So when everybody else was away, this person was able to function and do their job, with limited interruptions. So it's something that, has been kind of our main focus and priority that we're hoping it will continue to, show us the return on investment to rearranging some of that. I guess the truth be told, there is a little bit of wait and see with that. We're hoping that, it continues to trend the same. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't, but that's basically the main focus at the moment.
And Joe, is that because, of late, we've been relying on it more to try to pull back from MWRA? Or, I mean, is our, whatever it is we're treating every year, say over the past 5 years, has it been increasing? I guess I've not, in all these discussions over the years, I don't really remember drilling down to this particular level about the treatment plant, and I honestly don't know too much about it.
Yeah, so we're permitted the DEP for what we can withdraw. We have a maximum of what we can withdraw from that treat and put into the system. So the goal with Public Works staff is how do we sustainably, predictably, and consistently hit 75% of that withdrawal limit. So one of the things is to maximize, the ability to pump through timing fluctuations. The other thing is, making sure that our schedules are in patterns that, facilitate the ability to keep the pumping station running. So it's one of those areas where, when talking about it with the supervisor of water and sewer, we came up with an action plan and a couple of items to put into place to make sure that more often than not, that plant is on and that plant is pumping. So it's been basically a priority shift or a refocus, I should say. It's always been a priority, but it's something that is, moved up the tier as something that we want to be able to, consistently push out, like I said, 75% to the maximum, maybe even more, but 75%, the bare minimum. Think of it like a realignment of expectations. So,
And I don't know if this has been brought up or even thought about, but some of this data too, that when we're looking down, a couple of years down the road, and Ann and Joe, I don't even know if you've gotten any info or have any of the info. It's kind of hard to predict, but I know we have some serious apartment units and other places that are going to host people living in. Is there any impact on any of the numbers we have that, or any type of data we could add to it? I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a significant amount. Like when I look at these meter sizes, do we have any projects that are going to come up here, or anything going on in the next, say, couple of years that the meter size is going to be up there because of how big the building is, whether it be an apartment, condo? I wasn't sure if,
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So any of those projects that, if you're in tune to what's going on in town, obviously, you're aware of everything that's happening on Foundry Street. All of those units, whatever may or may not go in at 200 Corner Powit, obviously is much larger than your residential user. So that all has the potential ability to affect the rate structure. I don't think it would affect it negatively. We'd be obviously consuming more water, but that would be more accounts contributing into the general enterprise funds. So it's something we're always paying attention to, and kind of have plenty of input on the planning stages and whatnot. I wouldn't classify it overwhelmingly negative. As long as the infrastructure is there to support it, and it isn't anything outside of the box as far as constructability and being able to maintain it, we should have the capacity to handle anything that comes.
right. And I mean, and this is, the best part about it is you get to review this every year.
Yes, I think
This stuff gets added.
if I'm being candid, I'm cautiously optimistic of where we sit today. I think is in a better spot than where we sat last year, and I'm hopeful that next year we have an even better conversation to have.
So,
And sorry, one more thing.
Go ahead.
Joe, on some of these meters, like the 3-inch and 4-inch meters, what are some examples? And I know we talked about it before, but what are some examples of places that have those size meters?
I'll give you a good example. So Market Street, some of the accounts that rely on Wakefield's infrastructure there, those are all 2-inch and above.
Okay.
I believe the concrete company is a 4-inch. There's some apartment buildings and commercial down the end of Audubon Road that also have some of the larger ones.
Okay.
The overwhelming majority of our system in our town, 1-inch and below, is generally residential.
Okay.
Typically a commercial is a little bit bigger than that. That's just a few shooting off the cuff, though.
Mm-hmm. No, I just wanted a rough idea of some of the bigger accounts we have.
Yeah.
I'm all set now. Sorry about that. Elena, were you trying to speak, or was it Maria?
yeah, that's okay. It was me, but you weren't on, no problem. So I think with all the information we've been given, my inclination is that there's so much unpredictability with coming out of COVID, and with, the MWRA assessments we know are always going to come down from the preliminary assessments. So there's a little wiggle room there. In option one, even though we're showing these projected higher rate increases in the out years, we are showing extremely healthy reserves or retained earnings in fiscal 22 and even into fiscal 23, where there's the possibility that some of that could be used as a little bit of buffer if we needed it. My feeling is just that we over collected so much this year because water use was up so much that it's hard for me to justify the types of increases shown in option 2, even though, those do even out the projection over the 5-year plan. But I just think we don't know enough about where things are going to readjust and how exactly we're going to operate Crystal Lake and how far down our MWRA assessments will come when we have the final assessments compared to preliminary. And I just think we have a healthy enough buffer in there that option one is looking awfully good.
Maria, how are you feeling about this?
I think I'm similarly to Elena. I'm just feeling that, well, I had, a couple thoughts. I know when we did this rate structure last year, the folks that were going to feel it the most were the bigger users with the bigger meters. And I know we had a couple of abatement hearings for like the hotel at the lake, and this gentleman this evening was a commercial user. So I wondered anecdotally if there had been any kind of, buzz back about the exorbitant rates. I recall reading a letter, I believe it was a letter in the item from someone who was concerned about the service charges and felt that I want to say that, and I could be incorrect, but I want to say it was something like a, taxation without representation. I'm just throwing that out there. And thirdly, I'm not surprised that we've collected a lot just because it was dry, as you say, but everyone has been home. And I think just having everybody home residentially has been, how do you get away from not using all this water? I really don't know. But that all, the instability of COVID going forward, I'm with Elena. I just want to be conscious of the fact that it's been an unpredictable year. We're not quite sure where things are going. We've collected a lot of water, and that's wonderful because we were trying to start a program and really think about having reserves. So that's, I guess my inclination would be to put before the town reasonable increases that we can explain, that are really focused on preserving what we're trying to do long term and not squeeze people unnecessarily. Chris?
So sorry, can I just put my little bit of info? So it was a strange year. So residentially was up, but our commercial accounts were down.
Mhm.
Like, so Linfield Marketplace, the sewer, they ended up with a credit on many of their accounts in their fall bill because they didn't meet their estimates in the spring, because they were literally shut down until May, and then even during the summer, very limited. So it's very hard to predict where it would have been if it was just a normal year.
Mhm.
Yeah. Good point, Ann.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ann. That's why I feel like I think I agree with you both. I'd really like to keep it as low as we can, and try not to be easy with the increases, just because we never really got a full reading of what those new tier structuring was going to even do with the way COVID ended up turning out. I think it was a little mixture of dry weather and bad timing with COVID, maybe for the structure change, but the board's here to make decisions as well. So, with that in mind, I know we only have 3 choices here, but I certainly, anything that would lower the impact on the residents is certainly, and commercially too, is certainly where I'm leaning. I don't even know if there's anything different we could change to make this better, but I'm certainly open to anything.
So if we're talking right now, looking at option one, where am I correct in, Matt, I'm not math is not my strong suit, but where you have FY22 at the 2% for water.
Mhm.
And then for FY23, 6, and 6 subsequently, is that, I'm assuming next year when we're hopefully all sitting here discussing this again, the 6 isn't set in concrete, correct? We're just
Yeah.
doing this based on, this is sort of our mindset if we went with 2% this year.
Yeah, I think that, and Joe can answer this better than I can, but I think that the goal here is ultimately set rates for FY22. But, it's with having the future in mind. So it's really kind of adopting a plan, but the plan could very well change between now and next year at this time, based on what happens between now and next year at this time.
Mhm.
We can't predict the future. We just do our best with the information we have available to us. And that's why, I think Chris said it earlier, it's great to look at this every year because the numbers change every year.
Mhm. Well, it's a terrific deep dive on all this information. So thank you so much for putting so much time and effort, all of you, into it. But I just think to what Chris and Elena have said, and Anne, you're backing it up, knowing that the commercial accounts really, they had a bizarre year too. So I mean, it almost seems like we're going to have another year of, well, hopefully it will be more on, right? And people are going to go back into commercial businesses again. And, but we don't really know for sure. I'm more leaning toward doing something as, kind of, as I'm leaning towards nothing dramatic. Let's put it that way. And option 1 looks like the least dramatic of our options. But I'm willing to listen, Anne and Joe, if you have other thoughts.
So we're in the same boat as you are. It's very, very difficult year we're coming off of to try to figure out. We weren't sure even on collections if we would collect the money, if we will end up this year. I think it's very hard to predict off of old NWRA assessment, off of new. It's just, and every year it seems to be so different.
Right. Well, let me ask you this, and maybe Matt and Elena, you could weigh in. So we've adopted this new rate structure. We did it last year, knowing that we really needed a plan to basically harness and preserve our money to support our water supply and maintenance and all the we hope it won't be a lot of capital expenditure, but so we've made the kind of painful switch to this new type of system that accounts for a lot of different variables. If we move this year into not quite doing nothing, we want to increase the rate, but we want to do it in a way that's not that's as least painful as possible. If we were to suspend or level rather the usage, the service fees, my only thought on that, in my heart, I would be willing to do level, just keep them the same, but I think we just need to talk about a plan that we don't want to cut those off. Next year could be a really tough year too. So I guess what I'm struggling with is how much pain do we pass along to ourselves? And right, that I guess does that make sense, Elena? You know what I'm saying? When you think kind of, we want to be good stewards of this new system. And we want to think for the long range, but that we have this surplus this year is amazing. I think that's fantastic. it just seems, I feel a little, I don't feel 100% comfortable doing a big increase based on the fact that we have a surplus.
I can see, Maria, that if we were to hold the base fees, but do the 2% water and 1.5% sewer volumetric increases, on the residential customers, I bet a lot of people would see their bill actually go down from this year, because I think as people go back to work, they're going to see their bills go down anyway. And so the slight increase in the base fee kind of makes it so that, maybe a lot of people would have more of a break even. But I do think on the commercial end, where a lot of the commercial entities, their bills went down and now they're going to come back up, it's almost like a double hit on the base fee going up and the rate going up. So I don't know, I could kind of go either way. I do wonder, with the proposed increases to the base fees, to the service fees, how did you calculate what that increase was? It's to target a particular percentage, right? To try to get to that 65%?
Yeah, so we're already at the 65%. That was what was set for FY21. So it's,
Oh, sorry, the 70%.
yep. So it's just an additional 5% per year. That was the plan.
Okay.
So it would have been 70% in FY22. So whatever that 5% of so it says there, the administrative cost total is 1.1 million. So we're trying to recover an additional 5% of that 1.1 million.
Okay, so all those fees went up 5%.
Maybe.
Or no?
I guess that makes sense. I don't know.
Well,
Probably.
maybe.
Well, no, they didn't, because it's based on a share. It's based on the equivalent meters. So, well, maybe it still works out to 5%. I don't know. Let me calculate.
Okay.
I don't think it's a straight 5% across the board.
No, it probably wouldn't be.
Yeah, it's 7.5% for the small meters. And I'll just do the 3-inch meter next. Yeah, about 7.5%. Okay.
Okay, so the percentage is the same. I
Yep.
guess I'm wondering if we should consider distributing it differently. But I know we used the equivalent meter, that ratio, to establish it the first time. So if you did anything different, then you'd mess up that system.
Yeah. I mean, we have a certain methodology that we used, and it's saying to do it this way, but that doesn't mean we absolutely have to do it that way.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm thinking now that I'm looking at your tables is that if you did it a different way, it becomes arbitrary, right? Right now, like,
Sure.
it always ties back to the equivalent meter and service ratio.
Yep.
But if you were to distribute the same dollar value total differently, then you get to having basically no justification for how the differential is between meter sizes.
Yep. Totally agree with that. Yep.
Okay. Well, I could go either way as to whether to just leave the base fees the way they are, or to change them as you've outlined. I think it's a pretty minimal impact one way or another.
Yeah, and keep in mind, if you don't mind me just adding one additional point to that thought. When we did this last year, there was sensitivity to how it would impact people, because when everything was voted last year, the pandemic had already started. So that sensitivity was already there, which was the main reason why this board did not. I mean, I guess I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think this is what you were thinking. The main reason why you didn't go for the full 100%. You wanted to be sensitive to the users to make sure they weren't getting too much of a hit during that time. And I don't remember how we came up with the 65%, but that's where we ended up. So there was that phased in approach because of the circumstances that were presented last year.
So Joe, is it fair to say that anything less than option one, where we're already showing that in option one, we're under collecting in both water and sewer compared to the actual costs for the year? So is it fair to say that the town would not really be super comfortable with any option that reduces anything lower than option one? Is that why option one is where it is, I guess?
Yeah, pretty much. So from a comfort level, I guess from the administrative standpoint, we do recognize a lot of the things that yourself and the board had mentioned. I myself personally am a little bit hesitant to go lower than that, only because we're taking a bigger bite out of what we have available to us. God forbid we needed to get into it as far as an emergency was concerned. The other thing, at least on the sewer end of things, we know that the 75%, the grant match part of the MWRA loans, we're right at the end of it. We have one full-term loan left. Then after that, we're essentially on our own. So it's something that.
Well, that's not likely to be the case, though. That's just as we wait for phase 14 to.
No, and I hope it's not either. I mean, but sitting here today, I kind of got to keep that in the back of my mind. But we could explore going lower if the board wanted to, and to see what those numbers project out to. At this, I'm probably most comfortable with the option one as it was presented. Excuse me.
And Joe, now that we've had all this discussion, are you able to tell us what your preferred option was?
So I did not think that the level option was going to be the preferred option, just because of the state of the world. I thought option 3 was trying to kind of split the difference. But if I was to put a bet on it, I'd say that the board would prefer 1. The manager and me would probably lean a little bit more towards 3, and that we'd ultimately have some conversation and maybe even come up with something different.
Yeah. I have to say, Maria, I think I might be leaning with you in the sense of maybe freezing those increases for a year and going with option 1, maybe reviewing it in a year, next year.
So let me pose this question. Would it make sense, not that anybody needs to agree with my thought, but if we were to show these options again with that freeze in place, so what the freeze, what not changing the service charge would impact it is, and then lay it out so you could see the numbers in front of you.
Yes, I'd love to see that.
Okay, so knowing that, we want to do that with option 1, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Well, at least me. I don't want to
Yep.
speak for everybody.
No, I think you're right on. Does anybody want to see anything else?
I'd like to see an equivalent revenue generating option to option 1 with the base fee, with the service fees held steady. If that makes sense. So these percentages, the 2% and the 1.5% would go up to account for the amount of money that you're not getting by increasing the service fee. Does that make sense?
Yep, totally.
But you also want to see option 1, just what it would be with the 2% as well.
Yeah. I think Chris and Maria seem to be leaning towards an option 1 without increasing the service charges. And I just want to see an option 1A, I guess it is, with the service charges not increased, but the equivalent revenue, because I do feel like running a deficit of 340,000 on the water side is, it's not sound business practice to do more than once. So, you know, going even to an even bigger deficit there makes me a little uncomfortable.
I'd certainly like to see it all. Certainly, I'd like to see the numbers. I agree with you. Doesn't hurt to see it all.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, and maybe we see option 3 with the.
Sorry, do them all. I'm sorry.
I think option 2 is out, right? I mean, none of us want a 4.75 or 4.25%
No.
increase. So I'd be happy to not bother with option 2 again.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
That one out.
Matt, we know this won't be a surprise to you because I know you you worked up another set for us last year also.
Yes, I did. I remember. It's not a problem at all.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate the extra work too, Matt.
We
Yeah.
really do.
Yeah.
So for an action item, we have option 1, both water and sewer, with and without the service charge change. We followed the same methodology for option 3. And then is there anything else while we're on the topic that we think that we should take a look at?
So Joe, just a clarifying point. I think that the options that are going to be shown would, well, I guess it makes sense we would keep the current ones just for reference, but there would be an option 1 that would not have the service charge at all. And then an option 1 that would not have the service charge, but what would the rate increase have to be in order to make up for that revenue? So it's really 3 different option 1s, right? The original, the one without the service charge completely, then the one without the service charge plus the making up that revenue.
And when you're saying without the service charge completely, we're talking about the service charge increase.
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Service charge stays as is. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah, I think that's accurate.
And do the same for option 3. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for option 3, I mean, I don't think you have to do that extra thing with option 3 unless you want to.
Well, maybe just for consistency.
Yeah, if you want to, I personally think that when we're getting above 3 and 3.5% on the volumetric charge increase, it's going to become not something we're going to want anyway.
Okay.
Joe, do we need to take a vote to table that, or
Yes.
I didn't know if you had a deadline?
You could vote to recommend that we go back and then represent the changes at a subsequent meeting. One other thing, just while we're on the topic, does anybody on the board want to see the target for the retained earnings percentage move?
I think long term, maybe we should try to get it a little higher, but for right now, I think it's a pretty good, healthy number.
Right. So last year, remember, the goal was to get it to 10%, which we were basically mirroring, the tax levy in town. Last year, we used 7.5%, as our benchmark. This year, we've adjusted it to 8.5%. So if the board's comfortable with keeping the analysis shooting for 8.5%, we'll just leave that alone. The board wanted to see it moved or changed. We could also run those calcs too.
I think I'm okay with those the way they are.
I could see maybe in the future aiming for a 10% for the following fiscal year, and then allowing for an 8.5% for the out years, because there's so much uncertainty anyway that, they're really just rough numbers in the out years. But I could see trying to keep it above 10% in the following fiscal year, the immediate, the one we're planning for.
Oh, so you mean for the other 4 years? That's what when you say the out years, is that what
Yeah, to not be so concerned about, for 8.5% to be fine for those years. But for fiscal 2022, I like seeing something over 10%, especially with the kind of buffer that we have right now, where we're at 18% right at this moment in water, or projected. and 13% in sewer. It would seem like a shame to ever let that dip below 10% in the following fiscal year.
Okay, so the chair will entertain a motion to, I would guess, have Matt go back and revisit a couple different options for us and represent them.
So I'll make a motion to have Matt evaluate a couple of additional options that hold the service fees from last year for consideration at our next meeting.
Second? All in favor?
I,
Motion carries 3-0. Okay,
I have a question.
Yes,
When's
Jeff.
when's the next meeting?
good question.
good question.
That's the next topic.
How convenient.
Joe, sorry to change subject. I know I believe we have to vote for a chair and vice chair tonight too, right?
Yes, we do.
Do you want to do the next meeting first and then address that so Matt can get off the call, or?
I would. I think we'll let Matt go. He's got his marching.
We gave him
orders.
enough homework.
So yeah, I would just ask if the board
Sure.
wanted to set the next meeting. I would say if we could do that, obviously understanding that we're under a little bit of crunch of time because we have to get this to the council, in June. I would say if we could be sooner than later, that would be appreciated. Maybe next week, if that works for everyone.
Does a week help? Is a week enough time, Matt?
Yeah, at this point, doing additional options is really not a heavy lift. So I can be ready for next Monday if that works for you guys.
Elena, Maria, how's your schedule look?
It would be fine for me. The 24th, right?
Correct.
Yeah, it should work for me. I'm not 100%, but I won't be 100% any day right at the moment. So
And then option two, I mean, then you got the holiday weekend. So next option would be like Tuesday, June 1st or something, Joe, something to get you on the ball, or
I couldn't make that one, Chris, but I could do the 3rd.
June 7th, another Monday. I don't know when town council meeting is though.
So they're meeting the 14th and the 28th. So the goal would be to get that to them. I have a prior arranged commitment on the 28th. So if I could present on the 14th, it'd be appreciated.
Okay, so we got the 24th is a Monday, or we could do,
I mean, at least from speak up if I'm wrong, and from my perspective, it doesn't necessarily have to be a Monday.
Yep.
If any other days of the week work for anyone. I know we try to stick to Mondays, but I feel like this time of year we always have a meeting thrown in the mix somewhere.
well, does a week give you enough time to prepare for town council? Because then we could have two dates. We could have the 24th of May, and then we could have June 7th as a backup. That's a Monday unless other days work for somebody. I don't want you to rush either. I want you to have enough time to present.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if I'm not being too much of a pain, if we could.
Next Monday?
No, I was gonna say maybe the latest if we could have the meeting by the 4th.
Okay,
Just give me a little bit of time in between, but that's not make or break. I'd say for me, the drop dead date would probably be we'd have to have something by the 8th of June.
okay.
Give me enough time to get that out.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm usually traveling during the week, but I can certainly still make the call. So it's up to you guys. The 24th, the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 7th, whatever works. I just like to have one firm date with a backup.
Can we go for the 24th since we're, we'll keep our momentum? And then if something happens and we need to move.
That's
if-
fine.
If we can't convene then, maybe we could go to the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th.
That works for me.
You could even
Elaine,
do
are
the-
you okay with that?
Yeah, the 24th will most likely work. And then, if I can't attend, it's not a problem. I mean, I think either version of option 1 that we discussed, I'd be 100% on board with, and
Okay.
really whatever you all decide. If you go with something a little different, I'm sure I'd be on board with that too. And then the 3rd that Maria mentioned, that's actually, that's probably a good night. I, again, don't know 100% sure, but it
That's
right now looks like it would be good.
Yeah, if something comes up and someone can't make the 24th, we'll come up with an alternate day.
Okay, the only problem with if I can't make the 24th, I won't know until the 24th. So
That's fine.
I don't want you to plan around,
Okay.
We'll make sure too that any of the update stuff you get in advance too, so you can look at it.
Yeah, I'd like Elena to be able to share her input in case she can't.
Yep,
or wants
totally.
to.
Okay.
So the 24th at, what's better for you all, 5 or 5:30?
5, so you have plenty of time. Does that work? I don't know.
Sure.
For you, Matt?
5 o'clock, yeah, I'm available. That works.
So that's all set. Was I right, Joe? We have to vote on a chair and vice chair tonight, right?
I believe you have to vote to set the meeting now.
Yeah, and then, okay, so the next meeting would be 5/24/2021 at 5 PM. That's okay with everybody?
Mhm.
Yep.
Great.
Okay. All right, and then, okay. And then for chair and vice chair,
Were we gonna let Matt go?
Matt, you're all set. Sorry, buddy.
Oh, no problem. So I'm currently host this meeting. If I drop off, I don't know what happens. Should I make someone else the host? And who wants to be it?
Yeah, just make me the host.
Okay. Hang on. Let me see if I can figure it out. Got it?
Yep.
All right. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in a week.
Thank you.
Bye, Matt.
So Chris, are you interested in continuing to be chair of this committee?
I would unless one of you would like to. Maria,
No,
come on.
I'd like to make a nomination for Chris to continue to be the chair of this committee.
I heartily second that.
Maria, I thought you were going to cave this time.
No, Chris, no, not going to cave, my friend.
Well, I appreciate it. And Maria or Elena, would one of you like to be the vice chair? I would certainly.
Elena, I'm happy to pass the baton if you have the bandwidth, not that you need to do too much because Chris does such a good job, but
I am equally happy to let you continue in your role. If you have the willingness.
as long as you both keep coming to the meetings, I will do as asked.
I will similarly nominate Maria to be the vice chair.
Second.
Well, thank you. Did we all got you there, Chris, safely? You're in?
So we vote on both at once. I don't think we technically voted yet.
Put on the slate.
No. So you need a motion and a vote for chair and a motion and a vote for vice chair, just to make it official.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we continue with Chris as our chair for the next year. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries 3-0.
And I'd like to make a motion that we make Maria the vice chair for the next year.
Second,
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries. And was there anything else? Anyone have any other topics or anything that they needed to bring up?
I think we have our marching orders, so we'll do our homework and repackage that presentation so you guys can take a look at that. I think we should be good.
Chair would entertain a motion for adjournment.
so moved.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, guys. Have a
Thank you
great
so
night.
much
Thank
for
you,
all your
everyone.
time.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you, guys.
Take care. See ya.
Good night.
Here.
Good night.